The city was just waking up when the snow-covered streets glowed under the pale morning sun, and CEO Arlen Crawford stepped out of his office building, his mind buried in numbers, deadlines, and the demands of a world that rarely allowed him a breath of quiet. Yet everything around him stilled the moment he saw a small figure standing alone beside the iron fence, clutching a green backpack and trembling in the winter chill. Her tiny boots were half buried in the snow, her face pale, her breath shaky. She couldn't have been more than 6. When he approached, she looked up with frightened eyes, stepped closer, and whispered words that cut deeper than the cold itself. "Sir, my mom didn't come home last night." And in that instant, the morning light, the fresh snow, the impossible quiet of the street, all of it collapsed into one chilling question. Where was her mother? If you believe in kindness, second chances, and humanity, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to Kindness Corner. And tell us in the comments, where are you watching from? Your support helps us bring more heart-touching stories to the world. Arlen had built an empire from nothing, but the look in the little girl's eyes left him more helpless than any corporate storm he had weathered. Her name was Safina. She explained in a soft, breaking voice that her mother, Mara, had been working double shifts at a small bakery near the river. She always returned before sunrise, but not today. Safina had waited, curled up under blankets, listening for footsteps that never came. And when daylight finally arrived, she gathered all the courage she had, put on her little purple jacket, and walked through the snow to the only place she knew her mother often talked about, this street, this building, where she delivered pastries to companies. Hearing her story, Arlen tasted a deep ache he didn't understand. He didn't know this woman, yet something in the child's trembling tone told him the situation was real, urgent, and possibly dangerous. He guided Safina inside his office lobby, offered her warm tea, and alerted security to check nearby CCTV. But the cameras showed nothing helpful. Mara's last known trail ended near the marketplace, where the snowstorm had begun the night before. Arlen could have easily called authorities and gone back to his comfortable office, but something inside him refused to let this child face the world alone. Maybe it was because he, too, knew what it felt like to wait for someone who never returned. His own father had abandoned him when he was 10. Safina's fear mirrored a childhood pain he had buried under years of ambition. That memory, sharp as broken glass, lit a fire inside him. He couldn't abandon her the way he had once been abandoned. Daylight reflected off the icy sidewalks as Arlen took Safina's hand and promised he would try to find her mother. The storm that had raged the previous night had left the streets coated in thick snow, making every step slow and every breath visible in the cold air. The city seemed frozen in time. Cars struggled to move, shopkeepers shoveled paths, and the sun's dim glow made everything feel fragile and uncertain. Arlen and his driver began searching neighborhood after neighborhood, asking vendors, bakery workers, and taxi drivers whether they had seen Mara. Safina, though shivering, stayed quiet and brave, her eyes scanning every corner like she expected her mother to step out at any second. Hours passed with no sign of Mara. Arlen noticed Safina's small hands growing colder, her cheeks losing color, and he instructed his driver to take her somewhere warm. But the little girl refused to leave him. She held onto the sleeve of his coat as though letting go would mean losing the last hope she had. And maybe she was right. Because Arlen wasn't searching as a CEO anymore, he was searching as a man who could not bear the thought of this child's life being shattered. His heart led him deeper into the poorer parts of the city where street cameras didn't reach. Snow crunched beneath his polished shoes as the wind bit at his face, but he pushed through, knowing one thing with absolute certainty: he would not return without answers. Their search led them to the old industrial district, where the roof still held heavy blankets of snow from the night storm. A homeless man warming his hands over a small fire recognized Mara's photo. He explained that she had slipped on the icy road while carrying bakery boxes and had been helped by 2 strangers who took her to a small community shelter nearby. Arlen felt hope rising again. He lifted Safina into the car, wrapped her in his own coat, and instructed the driver to rush toward the shelter. Every minute felt like an eternity, the streets winding through silent blocks and abandoned warehouses. Safina leaned against him, exhausted, her tiny fingers clutching the fabric of his sleeve as though her life depended on him not letting go. When they reached the shelter, Arlen jumped out before the car fully stopped. The sun had climbed higher, giving a pale warmth to the snowy world around them. Inside the building, the air smelled of soup and medicine. Volunteers hurried around helping people injured by the storm. And there, on a narrow cot, lay a woman with a bandaged leg and bruised hands. Her hair was messy, her eyes tired, but when they opened and saw her daughter in Arlen's arms, they filled with life again. Safina's cry broke the silence, a sound so raw and relieved it made even the volunteers pause. She rushed into her mother's embrace, tears melting into the blanket of sunlit warmth that filled the room. Mara whispered over and over that she was fine, she had slipped, she had been rescued, she was coming home, but she hadn't been able to walk in the morning. Arlen stood nearby, watching the reunion with a feeling he hadn't experienced in years, gentle, humbling gratitude. He spoke quietly with the shelter staff and arranged medical support for Mara, offering to cover every bill. When she tried to protest, he simply said that her daughter's courage had moved him in a way he couldn't explain. Safina, still holding her mother's hand, looked up at him and smiled with a warmth that thawed something frozen deep inside his chest. As sunlight poured through the shelter windows, illuminating the snowy streets outside, Arlen realized that not all storms were made of wind and ice. Some storms lived inside people, and sometimes it took just one act of kindness to calm them. If this story touched your heart, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to Kindness Corner. Your engagement helps us bring more life-changing moments and real human stories to people around the world. Special request, before you go, please comment below what part of this story moved you the most. And as Arlen stepped back outside into the daylight, watching the snow slowly melt under the gentle sun, he felt something new rising inside him.